And we are live, Tuesday Night Live. Looking forward. We have a very interesting discussion. We're going to be talking about how to, some tips on running an inmate housing unit. I think it's going to be a great discussion. I can see the alerts going out. It's great when you have StreamYard because everything's going out automatically. So we're getting LinkedIn, Facebook, YouTube. And guys, remember, this happens every Tuesday night. So just as we start piling up in the room, I just want people to know that the topic today, we're going to try to keep it focused on tips on handling a housing unit. But as we progress, if we feel that we covered a good amount, then we can cross into whatever questions are coming in from the audience. Now, guys, we have two sponsors for the live shows. One is American Military University. Guys, if you're looking to seek higher education, it's a great place to go. They've totally been supporting the profession. They've been supporting me since day one. So, again, big fan. So if you get a chance, check out American Military University. And we also have Guardian RFID. So today's video is also brought by you by Guardian RFID. From inmate tracking and cell checks to cloud-based businesses and artificial intelligence, Guardian RFID digitally transforms jails, prisons, and juvenile detention facilities of every size. Visit Guardian RFID for more information. Guys, we have myself and 4 other people on the panel. We are here to answer your questions. By the way, good evening, everyone. I'm sure we'll get more people coming in. And I believe if time permits, if there's a chance to bring some of you guys on to talk to us directly, we'll also do that as well. But let me just bring the people on into the stream. Hopefully we get more people along the way. But if not, we can answer our own questions. We got Connie, Alleyne. What's up, Connie?
Hi, everybody. Connie, Alleyne here. I am the founder and president of the Civilian Corrections Academy, the podcast host of The Fly Behind the Wall, and the author of The Cage Was Her Cocoon. I am looking forward to our discussion this evening.
Yes, and we are loving having you, Connie. I hope all things are going well. And guys, don't forget, most of the people on today's panel will also be in Nebraska at their event, and we're also doing a virtual for the International Association for Correction Training Professionals, and that's going to be out in Arizona. I also have Russ Hamilton, founder of Keepers of Chaos on Facebook. What's up, Russ?
Hey, Anthony. Glad to be here. Glad I could make it in for this conversation. Looking forward to whatever I get to learn today.
Russ is wearing a shirt and tie.
I often wear a shirt and tie, but not because I want to.
You know what? Let me compliment you, Russ. I'm sure Russ will take this as a compliment. Russ, you look like administration.
What?
And on that note, let's get our other guests. We have William Young, who is the author of When Home Becomes a Housing Unit, and also a fellow YouTube influencer as well. He has Just Corrections. If you guys get a chance, please go on YouTube and check it out. What's up, Will?
How you doing, Anthony? Thanks for inviting me. Russ does look like administration. Originally, I was going to come on and introduce myself as Russ's understudy or stunt double, but I don't think I'm going to do that now.
Russ, you got to admit, Russ, it's a good look, Russ. It is a good look.
Okay, let me just say, in my defense, it's because this happens right when I get off work. This is work attire.
Nice.
All right, I get it. And then we have also Greg Piper. Oh, wait. Greg deserves a solo screen too. I am so sorry, Greg. That was so disrespectful of me. Greg Piper, what's up?
Oh, good evening, Tony. I am really happy to be back. It's been a little hiatus since I've been with you guys, but I'm excited to be back. Excited to talk to your listeners and your viewers and share all that I can. For those who don't know who I am, I'm a 14-year corrections veteran. I currently work as the director of jail operations for Guardian RFID. I travel the country visiting correctional facilities, implementing their software, and do the training, do the lion's share of the training for our company. So I'm in the trenches with our thin gray line every single week all over the country. And I'm just extremely passionate about our corrections professionals, brothers and sisters. And I want to do everything I can to make them more efficient, safer, and along the way, if we can make them smile, that makes me happy too.
And just real quick, Greg, if you don't mind, can you just give us a little description of Guardian RFID? They do support what we do here on Tier Talk.
Sure. Not being in sales, but being on the other side of it. Basically, the best way to describe Guardian RFID is we have software that is used through an Android-based device that allows the officers on the floor to track all their rounds, their inmate contacts, meals, head count, movement, supplies. Every interaction we have with an offender is recorded and tracked and shown in real time on a website so that staff can see what's going on, administration can see what's going on, you can follow each other, and we can be covered. Because the problem with corrections for years has been we've had to hide behind paper logs and things that don't track us in real time. No one sees how truly busy we are. So by having real-time tracking of all the interactions we have, the officers can know without a doubt that those of you who do your jobs every single day, you can get credit for what you do. And we can also share that information so we can dive deep, know when the offenders are trying to get one over on us. We can be in better contact with what's actually going on inside the walls using technology to our benefit, which is something we don't get to normally do in corrections because we're normally years behind the curve.
And guys, by the way, they have been supporting us for quite some time now. So if you get a chance, just check out the website. And also, again, American Military University. You know, we need more people to seek those degrees that work in the profession so they can teach experience and not just what comes from the books. By the way, let me bring everybody on. So hold on, because Andy, who was a big participant in our show last week, just said he received news today that he got the job as a correctional officer. Training starts July 12th. All right, Andy, congratulations. I see you're getting some shout outs there, but I'll tell you something, Andy, from the questions that you were asking last week, I'm sure you're on your first step to success. I would love for us to come back later on and find out that you're running your own prison, you know, and dressed like Russ every day, coming into work.
With the turnover rate in a couple of weeks, he may be running his own prison.
Oh, there it is. There it is. We got it. See, but this is what we're here. We're here to motivate. You know, we're here to motivate. That's the key. So what we're going to do today is have some fun. We're going to talk about some tips on how to run an inmate housing unit. Guys, we have multiple perspectives here: administrative, frontline supervisors, also on the civilian side as well, because there are things that they're going to expect when they're working those units and they want to feel safe. So at the beginning, I would like to see if we can have our questions geared toward that. So when people tune in, this is what they get. But then after we've done about 45 or 50 minutes, then we'll start taking some questions that could be a little off topic, just so we can, you know, obviously answer whatever concerns you have. So guys, keep the questions coming. But first, when I do a topic like this, when it comes to how to run an inmate housing unit, I'm going to have to go to Russ first. Because the reason why is Russ gets antsy and, you know, he keeps on moving around out there. And I said, you know what, Russ, let's do some generalized tips. Maybe you could talk about your first time running a housing unit, Russ.
All right. You know, I always love to discuss this thing because, you know, the housing units, you know, adjacent to the yards is really where, you know, so much of the action actually is. And so really, you know, if you really want to delve into what it takes to make things safe for the day, you have to have, for lack of a better term, a little bit of a routine. The inmates have to know what to expect. You have to bring consistency. That consistency is not for the inmates. That's for you on your shift and for the shifts that overlap you or butt up against you, because you all need to be on that same page. Because if you're doing different things, if you're allowing inmates to manipulate you into doing one thing on one shift and something on another, they're going to find that crease that allows them to breach security. So that's what I'll start with.
Yeah, and by the way, I don't know if people, but when you're working in a housing unit, my first advice, especially if it's in the summer, bring some water. I'm going CO style, guys. So before I give my thoughts, let's get to Will real quick. Will, thanks obviously for coming on today again. Hey, Will, what's your there he goes. So Will, do you remember your first day working a housing unit? You're muted, Will. Man.
Oh man, sorry. Rookie mistake. Rookie mistake.
God.
Yeah, it was the most horrifying experience of my life, actually. That when that door shut behind me, you could have put a piece of coal between my butt cheeks and made an engagement ring. It would have been fantastic. But no, I just had you had all these eyes on you. And see, in Academy, they told us, they said, hey, get your schedule, lay it out there. Give your little speech to the inmates, tell them what your expectations are. And as soon as that door slammed against that metal right behind me, man, all that went out the window. It's like I don't know what to do here. Look at all these people have one thing in common, and it's that they don't like me, they don't like what I represent, and I've got the keys that are stopping them from going where. Yeah, so it was terrifying.
Yeah, I think it's going to be, just kind of discussing our first days, and we'll obviously give our tips. But I'm going to be honest with you, for anybody says that their first day isn't terrifying or they're not nervous, obviously I agree. I disagree with them. I mean, I remember my first day just being stared down, walking through the yard to get to the unit. And when you're being stared down, you know that there's one of those inmates are trying to figure out how they can approach you. What game can they play? And then you're sitting there like just waiting for that. You're waiting for, what the funny thing is, guys? You're waiting for your first interaction. Because as you're going around, you're waiting for one of the inmates to come up. But the funny thing is my first day, I didn't seek to interact with them. I was waiting for one of them to come and interact with me. So before we get to Connie, because Connie's going to have a different perspective on her first day, I also want to go to Greg. Do you remember your first day, Greg?
Yeah, Tony, before you put me on solo, can you go back to the group shot for a second?
Hold on. There you go.
So you were talking about you were concerned because you felt like inmates were watching you to see if they could, somehow manipulate you. So can you share with our audience something about inmate manipulation? Maybe decode it for us?
Oh, well, you know what?
Yeah.
Usually I don't do this. I'm usually very humble. Oh, wait a second, guys. Look what happens to be right behind me. I have a book on the market. Oh, and guys, you see that link to inmate manipulation decoded in description? That comes with StreamYard. I did not purchase that. It's a default mode. I wish I could get rid of it. I may have to leave it on the whole time. But good point. So what do you got, Greg?
Thank you for that, Tony. So my first day, I was older when I started in corrections. I didn't start in corrections. I was 36 years old. So I had some life experience, but nothing prepares you. Just like Russ and Will both said, nothing prepares you. I walked in, it was a state prison, and the door shuts, and it's me and 88 guys. They're all out, hanging out in the day room, and there I was. And it is such an eye-opening experience. And I will tell every officer, from Andy, who's getting this job soon, to any other officer who's listening, if you can work on one thing before you walk in that door, it is put down the screens in your life. I know you're watching a screen right now, but put down the screens in your life and work on your interpersonal skills. You've got to be able to talk to people. If you can't talk to people, you will not be able to make it long-term in this industry. That was the one thing I had going for me. I was in customer service. I had worked retail. So that was my way, is I could talk to people, and that's how I made it. So I will tell you this, if you want to know what your best tip going in the door first day, learn how to talk to people. They're not inmates, they're human beings.
Yeah, I love that. And can I tell you something, guys? With the shift of the way we're going, it's good to hear someone that comes from that custody perspective saying that. I think a lot of us feel that we have to excuse when we feel that certain way. I mean, we did a show a while back when we talked about programming, and I felt that when officers said that they had an impact on an inmate's life, they had to quickly say, but be advised, I wasn't overly involved with that inmate. They feel like they're not allowed to do that. And I disagree with that. We are a part of that. We are a part of the impact that they're going to, have. We're a part of that. We are the role models. So I don't think we have to constantly excuse ourselves for being that role model. I think that's part of the service that we provide. And I think that's actually, hopefully that's where we start to head more, because I think ultimately that's the future of where corrections going. There's no turning back now. Old school method, it's gone, guys. So we need to kind of go with the momentum and be part of that change, or else we're going to be left behind. Speaking of change, speaking of working with civilians, yeah, let's get her in. The author of The Cage Was Her Cocoon.
Here we go.
Connie Alleyne. What's up, Connie?
Hey. So, I mean, my first day, I could say I was more than scared. I was like, every second, every thought that you could have to convince yourself to go back home was all going through my head. All I kept thinking is, what am I doing here? What am I getting myself into? Hearing those gates slam, and then at the same token, not knowing where I was going. So finally finding my way a bit, it was actually quite comforting that, so even though the first officer engagement, he was like, come on, you're looking lost, you're going to get eaten up in here. walking around looking brand new. He actually showed me to where I needed to go. And so I think there was kind of like, there's the lesson, but let me help you along. And I think that the more that we get that, where our first encounters aren't necessarily a negative encounter, but one that's helpful, one where the officer's engaging. Because, I mean, honestly, I didn't even know who to ask, right? So I'm like literally standing in the corridor and I didn't know anybody. So to have someone guide me to where I needed to go, I thought was great. And then even once I got into, you know, the office space, that in of itself has its own, you know, challenges, because for me, it was the first time I was walking through a sea of inmates waiting to see medical. And, you know, you don't know how to respond when somebody's saying something slick. You could tell that they could tell that you're new. And so, you know, I learned quickly, like, you know, someone's saying something slick, you need to respond, right? So that they don't think that it's okay, so that it is not received as though, you know, you like it, all the things that you just don't know as a new person, as a civilian. So, I mean, I have a great appreciation for the fact that officers in the units actually control all of that unwelcomed engagement, right? There's a lot of officers who would really just step in or respond to the inmates. And you know, they responded in ways I probably would have never thought of, but it stopped the unwanted behavior, and I was appreciative of that.
And guys, the key thing here too is that it shows that there's a partnership between custody and the civilians. That's the biggest key, because you never want the inmates to think that either side's alone. We don't want the divide. I know the other day, Connie mentioned a story. We're doing a thing on leadership, and we were crossing into the second level of John Maxwell's leadership policy on or model on permission to lead. And she mentioned a story about how the warden used to walk with her maybe once a week to kind of show, you know, that we're together. And I think that was very good for Connie, because the days that she wasn't with the warden, people would see her in that same light, that respect. And again, that partnership matters. If we're not partnered together, the inmates obviously can divide and conquer. So one of the big things that we have to start doing, at least that we're in control of, is bridging the gap between civilians and custody, and just trying to understand each other's perspective and really build on our relations with each other. And it really does start from administration on top, because we have the power to influence the departments to work together. But it's up to us on that front line and on up to kind of, you know, keep it going, maintaining it. At the end, let's stop generalizing. You have a problem with somebody, that's the person, not the department. You know, and we have to kind of stay away from those unfair generalizations. So the first question comes from Andy. Kind of figured that. So again, congratulations to Andy. He just got the job as a CO. And as you can see, when he was asking the questions, there are some good responses already in the comments, so I'll put them up as well. But he goes, since I'll be a new CO and the inmates might give me a hard time, how do you take control of your unit pod if the inmates won't listen to you? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to shake up the order a little bit. First, I'm going to go with Greg on this one. So what's your thoughts on that, Greg?
Well, I'm in a facility right now doing training with this staff, and the majority of the staff is a veteran staff. But one officer, he's been there 8 months, excuse me. He just finished his 8th month, and he came up to me and he said, I'm having a hard time getting the inmates to listen to me because I'm new and they don't respect me. So I've had to use my OC spray 9 times in 8 months. And I said, you got to be kidding me. In 14 years, I think I pulled my OC 4 times. But what is the difference is that this young man has not figured out how to talk to people. So you have got to set your standards. And I know a lot of what we're going to do is we're going to be repeating each other. Russ and Will and I are going to be repeating each other. We're going to be complimenting each other because we're going to say the same things over and over again. But the key is,
hey, why did you leave me out of that? Wait. Why can't I be one of the two? Why did you leave me out of that?
Say it again, Greg.
You haven't worked with an inmate in like 12 years.
No.
But in all
Damn.
You have to remember that the words we use in corrections all the time in training is firm, fair, and consistent. And there's a reason for that. Because you want to be firm with your words. You want to be fair because they are human beings, and you want to be consistent. So set your ground rules, stick with them, and having them say no to you, that's totally fine. There's nothing that says they can't say no. They have every right to say no. The key is, what do you do then? So my advice is you say, that's fine, that's your choice, but there are consequences for every action. For every choice you make, there has to be a consequence. You're making choices. I have to make decisions to run that unit. So you be firm, fair, and consistent every day. Stick with it. Don't get too high. Don't get too low. Stay right in there. And just know inmates are going to say no to you. Set your ground rules, but don't take it personally.
Yeah, can I also add something so I look like I'm original? So just in case someone has a thought, I'm going to say it first. At that point, everybody, is copying Gangi. One of the things here, and we've done this on the show before, all serious aside. No, all jokes aside. All jokes aside, the thing is we don't believe in the sink or swim method. We believe that totally isolates the rookie, sets a bad impression for the rookie on the first day. Basically, you're a rookie coming in, and you get no love from your senior staff. I mean, look at the separation right there. And the sink or swim, no, guys, we're meant to help each other, cultivate each other. And the cool thing about when we're working together, cultivating each other, the inmates see that. So we kind of share off each other's strengths. So if I'm having an issue with an inmate, the inmate knows I'm not just dealing with you, Andy. I'm dealing with, your support. And that's how we roll. We're here to complement each other. And that will help out with that vulnerability until you're able to really start running things on your own. And for the officers that still follow that old school method, sink or swim, I mean, think about that, guys. You got someone coming into this profession, and what we promote all the time is unity, family. And then all you do the moment this officer comes in with that impression that we're together is say, here's the unit and I'm gone. And they call you up for help and you hang up. That to me is stupid. It's foolish. It leaves the officer in an extremely vulnerable position when it would be great if the officer calls you, here you are to help him or her, to compliment because they're new. And then eventually the inmates will realize, you know what, if I decide to play out this rookie, not only am I, choosing a battle with this rookie, I'm choosing a battle with all of first shift, all of second shift. So again, guys, no sink or swim. And I'll go to Russ because Russ is obviously, Russ, we've covered this before, right? Sink or swim?
Yeah, there's a lot to that. But what I'll try and cover right now is just understand that you're not going to be able to go in there and emulate the older officers that you see. You're going to have to kind of pick your own way through. Hopefully they're going to be there to back you, but it's different for you going in and starting to work in this unit than it is for me. And what I mean by that is I can go into a unit and win the shift every single day. You're not going to start out doing that. You're going to have to get some seasoning and experience to be able to pull that off. So you really have to have a much kind of bigger picture about what's going on. You're not there to win the shift. You're there to win the week or maybe the month. And you have to do that through an eventuality rather than trying to just, get satisfaction in what you're doing that day. So what I tend to do is, especially if I'm, walking into a new unit and I'm a brand new guy, what I tell them is this, is that you want to make doing the right thing easy and you want to make doing the wrong thing hard, and you keep the pressure on. You keep the pressure on them, you keep the pressure on the rest of the unit, and you make it so that your battle lines are drawn, and they're not right then and there where you're going to be pepper spraying everybody. That's not going to get you very far. There's a time and place where it may come to that, but it's not right then and there every single day. So once you pick all of those battles, you stay with it time after time. Don't get soft. Don't give ground. If you give ground, they'll see that as weakness, whether it is or not, even if you're just trying to get along, right? And then after that, they assume they've won and that you're going to give up everything to them. So don't cede that ground unless you can do it where you can talk to them and explain why you're giving in to a particular, not demand, but a request or whatever. So those are the things you have to do to start working that unit.
And before we go to Will and Connie, I just want to say prayers are going out to Cuyahoga County CO Horace Washington. Unfortunately, he died from COVID. So again, another hero taken from us way too soon. So if it matters, I'll dedicate this video to CO Horace Washington. So some good tips and advice that is coming our way, and obviously dedicated to CO Horace Washington. So again, Cuyahoga County, sorry for your loss. Another hero taken from us way too soon. Going back to the question, Will, and I'll would love to get your thoughts on what Andy asked. Basically, how do you take control of your unit pod if the inmates won't listen to you?
Well, I'm gonna take it a little bit different approach, and I'm gonna say that your interaction at that moment starts when you very first start your career, when you very first walk in that door. So I'm a big proponent of getting to know your housing unit and the people inside. You can't control a housing unit if you don't know the housing unit, right? And the way that I do that, and Greg said it, and we're going to repeat ourselves, is communicate with the people, right? I go out, I talk, they want you to do your rounds, how you doing, what's going on today. I like to know what's happening in their heads, who they play cards with, because then when I have to, then you start building your rapport, you start building that foundation, and they get to know who you are, right? And so the first time that you interact with them isn't a, hey, I need you to clear the day room, or hey, I need you to get off the phone. You've been talking to them. They know you're not afraid to talk to them. They know you're not afraid to interact and treat them like people. And then when you do have to come in, like I had a situation where I was doing rounds and I just stopped by and just talked to a guy for no reason. I was just bored, so I stopped, talked to him, and listened to him for 7 minutes, and then I walked out and I walked around the corner, and then a couple minutes later I heard screaming, like freaking out, a couple voices yelling back and forth at each other. So I came back around the corner, and it was the officer that was running that housing unit, and he was screaming at the inmate that I was just talking to. And I walked around the corner, and it was a situation where they needed to get an item from that inmate, and he didn't want to give it up. I came around that corner, I looked at the guy and gave him a look like, what are we doing? He saw me, and because I spent a little bit of time talking to him, he just gave up. He just said, you know what, I'm done. I'll give it to you. Because we just had that. So that little interaction that I had stopped what could have been a confrontation later. And so when you're focusing on, as a new officer, and you're focusing on these, these conflicts and these confrontations, and how to, where to keep your hands and your bladed stance and reactionary gap and all that, I say this. Think about laying the groundwork with your mouth, with your communication skills. You're finding that common ground, that working relationship. And a lot of officers are going to, I'm not going to talk to the inmates. This is, you have to have a working relationship with these guys because you're locked in there, right? That starts the minute you start your career. That starts when you get to work. Right? You don't want to roll up onto a situation the only time you're dealing with these people is during confrontation. So that's what I'd say.
Yeah, I want to share something, feed off a little bit of what Will said. When you have those confrontational inmates, Andy, you have to pick and choose when to deal. Don't chase after pride, because then you could wind up getting yourself hurt or killed. You have to control the environment and address the inmate. Sometimes when you have the environment controlled, like Will said, and you deal with that inmate one-on-one, you're going to get a different inmate. 100%. I shared a story a while back on the channel about me going back and forth with a female inmate, and the senior officer is just watching me. And then he finally asks me, "Do you think you did it? You think that was correct?" And I said, "Yeah, because I was chasing my authority. That perception of authority. The inmate was still doing what they were supposed to be doing, but the inmate was like mouthing off, and I just wanted to get ultimate compliance without the mouth off. But the problem is, we were surrounded by her peers, so the culture that we're in is it doesn't support the behavior that we want. So we couldn't expect her to shift. But the moment I pulled her aside and chatted her back in the days when I dealt with inmates, Greg, and I sorry, I put that in there. So when I chatted her aside, she was actually like exhausted from just this constant bickering that we were having back and forth. But I promise you, there was such an impression I made in that controlled environment, because I controlled the environment, which helped me control the dialogue. And that impression was the foundation of something that was unique. Never had an issue from her again. But if you don't control that environment, you're not going to be able to control the inmate. Now, Connie, I know you've had some negative interactions. So would you kind of tell us how you navigated through that?
So, I think one of the first things that I learned to do was to set boundaries, right? So a lot of times we are in the nursing station, in the medical unit, and you have an inmate who wants to come and mouth off or tell you what they want or tell you what you're going to give them. And many times it's like, can you go take a seat? I'll be with you in a second. Right. So like, it's not even engaging in whatever energy they've come to the station with or come to the medical unit with. Many times they'll come to my door looking for things. First of all, it's like, why are you here? How did you get here? And of course, it's a conversation with the officer to understand how an inmate comes to my door unannounced. But then it's also, how do I make sure that there are boundaries established and engage with them with confidence, right? Like if you show up at my door and all of a sudden I'm compliant or I'm giving in to whatever it is you're asking for, it shows that you have control of that interaction. And so it really matters that you take back control and you take ownership. I've never acquiesced my authority to an inmate. So I think that's one of the things to always bear in mind. As they engage, like, they're going to go as far as you allow them to go. And it's not until you set the boundary, you engage with them with confidence. And really it's, so what are you here for? Right. But that's at your time, not at their time. I recall I was on the phone doing like a collateral contact. And one day an inmate came into my office and just sat down. And like, at first, there's like the nerves, right? I'm a little nervous because I don't even know where he came from. I mean, I know he was on my list to be seen for that day, but the fact that he came in and made himself comfortable and I didn't call him in, like, I felt that he was pressing the issue. He was crossing the boundary. He was establishing some level of, I don't know, dominance, authority, power, whatever way you want to look at it. And so as he sat down, I just kind of looked at him and I was like, can you step out? I'll call you when I'm ready. And he was like, what? And, to see the shift in his face and in his mannerism, for me was like, okay, so that was the right thing to do, even though I was nervous to do it. But I think it's establishing your presence, taking ownership of who you are and your role, and understanding how to leverage the authority that's inherent in your title. You're mute.
You're mute.
Oh, boy.
There it goes. I want to, we have a private chat on the side, and Greg touched on something that I think is also very important, because actually, I didn't mean to plug, but I am going to plug something here. Let me have Greg introduce the thought, and then I want to compliment what Greg has to say. But Greg, can you talk about what you said in the private chat?
Yeah. One of the things that I try and tell staff that I meet everywhere is the one thing you never, ever should lie to an inmate. There's no need for it. First of all, we have all the tools. We've got the keys. We got the radio. We got the OC. We've got we're going home. We got the radio. We've got all those things. So there's no point in lying to an inmate. If they ask you a question, you answer the question. If they ask you something about security, you can obviously say to them, well, that's not something I can answer. But you don't need to lie to them. If an inmate says, hey, can you tell me what my balance is on my account? I'll try and get that to you. But you don't lie to them and say, oh, I don't have that, or I can't get it, or I don't have time for you. Okay? I don't have time for you is actually not a lie. You may not have time. That goes back to the respect thing. But I have never found a reason to lie to an inmate and found that has any value at all. All that does is that takes down your credibility, and it takes down the credibility of every other person in a uniform. So building that credibility starts with you. And if you're consistently truthful, be honest and sincere and clear, you build that rapport, and that just helps every other brother and sister in the uniform.
Yeah, you know what? You said something great about the credibility. So, guys, believe it or not, the inmates have to trust us. Obviously, on the adverse of that, we know that, universal precaution with the inmates. We're not there to trust them. We're there to do our job. But they have to trust us. And the reason why I was pointing to the book before is there was an officer that I'm aware of. I got to be very careful. I don't want to give out too specifics, but basically, it's not no safety and security concern, but
Russ.
Basically, in his dialogue with the inmate population, inmates would try to ask him personal questions, something as simple as sports or how many kids you have, stuff like that. Now, be careful with the little dialogue, and we'll get to that because Andy has a question that I want to hit up next, but I just want to compliment Greg's thought in the chat. This officer would, like, how many kids you have? I have 7. Then they would tell another inmate, I have 5. I have none. They would just kind of go back and forth. And then this officer would kind of find it was funny. So he would share the stories, and I'm just listening to it. And I'm like, all I get is inconsistency. I said, I know what your problem is. And he's like, what? I said, you can't tell the inmate it's none of their business. That's why you're lying. I mean, if an inmate asks me that, it's like, hey, not your concern, none of your business, whatever it is. There's no need to have this dialogue. It's unprofessional. The reason why this person kept on making up these stories was because the person had a problem saying no. It's not for you to know, and I thought it was pretty funny because eventually this officer did come back and he goes, you know what, Gans, you're 100% correct. I was like, really? I didn't expect that. But I did have some time over them, so maybe that's why. But You're coming out as being inconsistent, like Greg said. And inconsistency is not going to give you trust or credibility amongst the inmate population. And this is actually great because it pushes us into Andy's next question. So I'll start with Connie first. How do you know when you're making too much small talk? What kind of small talk should I make? Now, there's a good perspective here because Connie on the medical side, on the civilian side, I'm sure there's a lot of inmates that try to engage in that small talk. So what do you tell the civilians that you teach in your civilian corrections academy that is available online if people are interested? I did a Greg Piper there. But no, on a serious note, how would you answer that question, Connie?
So, you're talking too much when you're talking too much, right? Like when you have to start thinking about what else to say. If you've answered the question, that's the only information that you need to be providing to the inmate, unless there's something else you feel might be missing from the dialogue. But the moment you start ad-libbing and throwing things out there that wasn't the question, then you're talking too much. And I think a way to kind of check yourself is, what question did this inmate ask? Did I answer it completely? And then you end that exchange. There's no need to continue talking, because what happens when you get talking is that you start putting in stuff in there that's simply not information you should be putting out there, right? Because sometimes I think as people start rambling, then they start dropping bits and pieces of information that wasn't specific to what the inmate was asking. So for me, I try to keep small talk to a minimum, because from the civilian side, as they start asking like little bits and pieces, kind of push them to ask us more questions. And sometimes we just don't know that we're giving out too much information. So it's best that we actually answer the question and then we end that exchange, as opposed to answering the question and continuing to throw stuff out there, because that gives them the opportunity to continue to dig.
Right. And guys, I also want to mention something else too, to compliment Connie before we get to Russ on this, is that the person asking questions is the one in control of the dialogue. So you have to be very careful where those questions are taking you. At all points, you're the one that should be in control of the dialogue. You should know where it's going. If you feel at any point you're losing control of that dialogue, you need to step away and revisit. That is the big small talk. I get the small talk aspect, because you got to get from point A to point B. I get that. And that gives you an understanding of who the inmates are, but it should not reveal who you are, except for the professional role that you have to play within your prescribed role. But you need a purpose. If an inmate is trying to have small talk with you and it's distracting or whatever it is, I mean, what is their purpose? Is their purpose to solve an issue, or there's something going on in the unit that you're taking my eyes away from? So at all times, you have to be in control of the dialogue. Like Connie said, if I ask you a yes or no question and you give me anything but a yes or a no, you haven't answered my question. So I'm going to go back and ask you again, yes or no. Make sure that when you ask a question, they're giving you the answer that, should be there, should be expected, because a lot of the times they'll run you around and all over the place, and you're just sitting there going down this journey and you have no idea where you're headed. So you need to stop that car. Hey, hold on. It's not what I asked you. So let's bring it back again. Promote your perception of authority and say, let's do this again. I asked you this. What's the answer to that? Russ, what's your thoughts about controlling the dialogue?
Yeah, that's that thing that you really do have to be careful. You can inadvertently give up things that you don't want to give up. In some of those cases, it may end up being harmless to you. In other cases, it may be used to exploit you or someone else. I think the best way to look at it is just, see what's within the realm of, the talk at the prison with regard to what's going on with the inmates, their programs, the immediate things that are affecting them, and then pretty much everything else except maybe the weather that's directly overhead should be off limits. This is one of those things that you really do have to control that to an extreme degree with these guys. Because otherwise, then you end up in a situation that's either, obligational, or where they get a piece of intel that they can use against you to manipulate you into something that you may not even understand that you've been manipulated into. So keep that in mind. And this is where we also butt up against that whole thing about rehabilitation, right? Do we have a part in rehabilitation? Yes, we should. The degree to which that can be accomplished is kind of limited, though, because we're not in a position to exchange trust, to exchange that small talk. And so we have to dial that back. If you're not controlling the dialogue by thinking about what you're asking and talking about and answering, then you shouldn't be in any kind of a conversation with that inmate. It's active talking for a purpose and active listening for a purpose that separates small talk from real talk.
Yeah, and guys, by the way, I'm going to get to all the questions that we have there. Obviously, there's some good questions coming our way, but I still want to hit up. I still want to get William Young and Greg Piper's thoughts on Andy's question. So Will actually has a great video on his channel, Just Corrections. I remember you did a video and it dealt with running a dorm, and there was some good advice there. Do you mind maybe repeating some of that advice that you had on your channel?
Yeah, sure. I just want to say that if I can real quick just touch on the small talk, and then I'll jump over there. That it's okay to be aware of what you're saying and what you're communicating to an inmate. You don't want to give your personal business out there. I understand that, but don't study communication. Learn how to effectively communicate, because the officers that say no and get out of here and you don't, that don't communicate, in my experience, have a hard time. And again, we're not saying give everything, but so part of my tip is to be proactive in a housing unit, get down, know your people. I'm a huge small talk person. I love communicating with people, but Anthony's right when he says you have to control the dialogue. As long as you're steering the car, then everybody's riding with you. I mean, that's what it is. So you have to get to know that. Now, I had an old sergeant a long time ago tell me, and this was I know a point of contention among some people that saw the video, because I got some of the comments, but he said, hey, Young, how do you get a housing unit's attention? I'm like, well, you scream at him, right? You say, hey, listen. And he says, no, shut off the TV. And I'm like, shut off the TV. And he was right. Listen, now here's the thing, okay? And this is what I got. I got some comments. So, Andy, new officers, brand new officers, here's the deal. Don't shut off the TV in the middle of the Super Bowl. Don't shut off the TV in the middle of the NBA playoffs unless you've told them, hey, guys, I don't care if you watch it. As long as it stays cool, we're cool. Don't worry about it. If they get out of control, they understand the consequences. But you have to effectively communicate when you say, hey, gentlemen, I need your attention. They don't listen. Hey, gentlemen, I need your attention. They don't listen. Boom, I hit the TV. Now they all look at you. You want to get someone's attention, you shut the TV off. Hey, guys, look, I'm trying to get a hold of you. Med Pass is coming in. I need you to hit your rooms real quick. As soon as you get the door shut, I'll turn the TV back on. Okay, go. Boom, TV's back on. I did what I said. I didn't lie to the inmates. It takes 30 seconds, right? So there's different levels. The very first thing you got to do is you got to talk to them, right? We had a unit, kind of one of our medium max mods, that because we were so proactive, because I got down and talked, because of my rapport with the guys in the housing unit, I just flicked the lights, and they cleared. But a funny story, and this is kind of bad. I told, we've been doing that for a couple of years, and we told this new guy, he said, hey, this is what we're doing. You don't have to yell at these guys. You don't have to do nothing. So he called out to the office, and I heard the sergeant. She says, what'd you do? You hit the lights. They wouldn't do what? And I'm like, oh shit, we got to go in there real quick. So we went in there and then we talked to the guys. But you want to start just by communicating your concerns, talking to them, letting them know, hey guys, I need you to clear the day room. Hey guys, this is what I need you to do. They already know what to do. Here's the beauty of it, Andy, is, and anybody who's listening, is the inmates already know what's going on. They know what time pill pass is. They know what time dinner is. They know what time lockdown, count, all that stuff is. They're just testing you to see if you're going to actually enforce it, right? And so then that's when that consistency comes in. That's when you communicate, hey guys, it's time to go to lockdown. They already know. They know. They're going to drag their feet. They're going to drag their, it's going to take forever. How do you react to that? Do you lose your mind? Do you get frustrated? Do you look scared? Those are the kind of things that they're going to be looking for, right? And so again, my best advice is to get down to know your people, to talk to your people. So when you have to ask them to do something, it's not the first time you've talked to them, and they will respond better than if you don't talk to them at all.
Guys, I think we were just invited to Atlantic City to teach at MASCA in May of 2022. And it's to teach, not to gamble. So obviously, I know Connie's involved in MASCA, but obviously, Sheriff, you guys are not aware. So I'm one of the people on the board for the New Jersey chapter of the ACA. Just to give you a little insight on that. So I guess each state has their chapter. So I've been honored to be a part of this board for the last few years now. And I've been able to sit next to some of the best in corrections. I mean, literally, guys, all walks of corrections, all sides. And it's given me a very good view of what the mission for corrections is about, the balance of safety and security and rehabilitation, and just the passion and dedication that defines what we do and the heart behind the work we have. And Sherry Sandler is the one that, got me involved in this, took a shot at me, knowing I was controversial or whatever it was, but she saw something in me and just said, hey, would you like to sit on this executive board with us? And just to sit next to these people, President Bob Ricardel, I mean, you're sitting next to people that are so passionate and just want to get the message out and really help us, everything from mental health to what our role is. I mean, even right now, for her to watch this and say, hey, this would be a great topic for MASCA, I'll give you guys a great time slot. Guys, this is the care that she has for the front line. So if you guys get a chance, you should check out, at least the New Jersey chapter of the ACI. I could speak on their behalf, their mission to help custody. I mean, not just in New Jersey, but to kind of travel out, because MASCA is a different organization that's mid-Atlantic, but they care for our well-being because they also know if you care for the front line, then that's going to outwardly help the inmates get to where they need to be. But their perspective is help the front line so they could be effective. And again, I'm just a big fan of Sherry Sandler. So thank you. And yes, I would definitely be taking that invite. I'm sure I know Connie will, because she'll be probably organizing part of this with you guys. But Greg already said yes, and he keeps on saying yes in the private comments. So thank you for inviting us. And it would be a pleasure to meet everybody when we're there. And we'd love to have discussions like this. Now, before we get to, I got to get to Greg. Hey, Greg, what's your thoughts on the small talk? I know we touched a little bit on what you said about don't lie to an inmate, but I thought maybe you may have a little more on the small talk.
Well, we know I'm never at a loss for words, obviously. But one of the things that I learned as I grew, and I guess it was more a maturity thing, is that you're going to build a rapport with your offenders. There's going to be this give and take. And sometimes that's going to get into, there's some natural, some ribbing and some teasing and, calling, saying things, you build that rapport that comes over time. And so one of the things I always made sure of is if the inmates, after I had built some rapport with them and spent some time, especially like William so wonderfully said, getting to know my living unit, because I was in the same living unit at the state facility for a year at a time. Once I got to know those guys, if they teased me about things, that was fine. We had a little jabs, if we watched the game and their team lost and whatever. But I always made sure they understood that there was a line. And we never talk about anybody else. You never ask me about my family. You never ask about anything like that. You can talk about me, and I will share with you things. I can share that I'm from a certain state without getting too specific. That's that human element. But I think also, to Russ's point, controlling that dialogue, so ensuring that it doesn't become too much. One of the things that people do in corrections, because we spend 8, 12, sometimes 16 hours a day with the same group of people, and they're inmates, not our family, is we tend to get more accustomed to them. We become more attached to them because they're kind of like, Williams, it's like your family. It's your little home away from home. Is you sometimes forget the environment you're in. And so you do overshare. So making sure that you do have those conversations, it's natural. It shows that you are human and you are willing to listen to them, but you've got to find that line where you don't cross. You never share past a certain point. You ensure that you are controlling that conversation and that you don't think of the people inside the walls, in the uniform, as anything more than these are human beings that are here to do some time. They're here to serve that time, but they're not your family. They're not your friends. They're the clients that you work with, if you will. And don't cross that line. Do not be one of those people. Every person on this panel has a person that they know professionally who's been walked out from inside the walls in handcuffs from an undue familiarity relationship with an offender. Don't be the next one.
Hey, you just crossed into what Shannon was getting ready to ask when it comes to what's your opinion if you're feeling a coworker is being too friendly to an inmate after you had said something to them. Can I mention something? Can I start this part off and then I'll feed it off? We'll go with Connie first and work our way up. One thing is if I'm starting to work a housing unit, and let's say I never worked with this person before, I do want to have a discussion to see where we could be consistent. If I'm bidding and it's long term, I want to have a consistency with the different shifts, first and third, second, whatever it is. You want to have some consistency in the housing unit because one thing is it makes things run smoother. Second thing is inconsistency is like if dad says no, I can go to mom. They start shopping for staff. So the key here is consistency, having a partner that you both understand what you expect from each other, and the inmates see that you're constantly in communication and you don't challenge each other's orders. This way, if an inmate gets a no from me, they can't run to my partner and get a yes. So one thing right off the bat is that consistency between you and who you're working with again, if it's not you don't work with this person every day, before you start to get into that momentum of running that unit, take a few minutes with that officer and try to understand what it is that you're both trying to accomplish, and make sure at all times that you don't undermine each other. Guys, that is what kills us when we're working a housing unit is inconsistency. Inconsistency kills us. If your partner is, saying no and the inmate thinks, well, you're soft and you're going to say yes, and then you start saying yes and undermining your partner, that's the biggest insult. Also, on another note, as a supervisor, it's a big insult. It's a big insult when, the officer expects you to back them up and an inmate can go directly to you. If I'm a supervisor and I go in a unit, inmate comes up and says, hey, whatever the concern is, what's your supervisor do? Did you talk to your officer? At all times, we always have to maintain that perception of authority. And we have to always be realized when that perception of authority is being passed off. And then if we receive it, we have to make sure that we give it back to where it goes. So again, in the inconsistency aspect, if I say no, and then the inmate's like, well, I'm going to run with it. So now they take my perception of authority and they bring it to my inconsistent partner. My partner, if they say yes, what did they just do? They just gave my perception of authority over to the damn inmate. Same thing as a supervisor. If you're a supervisor, we expect more from you. I just said no. And even if I'm wrong, give me the chance to correct the mistake. But do not undermine my decision and give my perception of authority to the inmate. Because I'm going to tell you something, guys. At that point, I'm not going to be able to run the unit. I'm never going to be able to run the unit because the inmate's going to know that I can always circumvent you. Yeah, Gangi, your no is no good. Because anytime you say a no, I'll go to Sergeant such and such, or I'll talk to your partner when you're on break. Inconsistencies kill us. Another thing is when you're writing an inmate up, let's say you write an inmate up and maybe the sanction is something that could be done that day, like 4 hours lockdown. A lot of officers feel that when they write the inmate up, they have to wait, I want the inmate to serve the sanction when I'm there. Because I know for a fact that there's this other officer there, they're going to probably say the inmate served the sanction, but they're not really going to serve the sanction. Shouldn't be that way. If I write an inmate up for 4 hours and my shift is coming to an end, I should expect that next shift to carry that out. That's the consistency. But I'll go with, let's go with Russ first. What's your thoughts on, well, one, let's talk about the consistency between partnerships, between partners, and then maybe cross into Shannon's question, Russ.
Yeah. So I just want to jump back and dovetail a little bit into what Greg was talking about there. And one of the things, that people often take for granted is just, how much of a mind game this whole thing can be. And so when you look at the situations like Greg was talking about, that brings up a term that's similar, but not the same, but still can evoke the same kind of responses in us because we're human. And that's Stockholm Syndrome. Right. And, people, if you know about that, it's about what happens to both hostage takers and hostages in a situation like that. Well, you can magnify that over a period of years being around those inmates all the time. And if you don't watch yourself, you'll end up empathizing first and then eventually sympathizing with the inmate and taking it to a point where you're no longer objective. So I just wanted to say that. And just point out that was great by Greg, him pointing out, just how much time we do spend with these individuals and how that can erode our objectivity if we let it.
Hey, can I sense a rhythm in the private chat. I don't know if you guys are doing something in the private chat, but I sense a rhythm. So all I get is, that was great, Greg. That was great, Will. That was great, Russ. And for a while, I'm like, yeah, well done, everyone. Well done, everyone. That was great, Connie. Well done. Hey, what the fuck? You know what I mean? Gangi be saying some good shit too. Where's the good job, Gangi? Hey, I just want to mention something. Marcus Cole said something very humbling. I just want to share it. This and all the channels represented are responsible for saving my life and career. I'm forever indebted to your expertise, skills, and overall knowledge. Invaluable, my friends. This is the community, guys. This guy's actually complimenting the community. You know, everything from Will Young, Just Corrections, Russ, Keepers of Chaos, Connie and her dealing with civilians and making sure that they have the knowledge to make the job safe. And Greg with just the work that he does all the time to make sure if there's technology that can make our place safer, let's get people the knowledge that, you know, can help them, because every day we're looking to save lives. So Marcus, that's humbling, but it's humbling on such a high level because you just complimented the community. And that also comes, let's not also forget the people that are commenting right now. We wouldn't even have a show if we didn't know what questions to answer. It's you guys that are bringing up the questions that are relevant, and then we try our best to attack those questions in a manner that's objective and as much of a perspective that we could provide. Okay, so let me just get back to the group. So I still want to answer, we're working on Shannon's question, so I'll go with Connie next, if that's okay. Connie,
can you read some of the side chatter?
All right, read some. Oh, what did you guys put in? Okay. William Young, great job, Gangi. Great job, Tony. We love you. Anthony looks so good tonight. That's from William Young. Great points, Gangi. You're amazing. Well, I appreciate that. You know, I needed something, man. You know, I was feeling like alone. But you got to admit, I lasted about 2 comments until I realized, like, wow, these guys are totally going. And then Russ killed it by saying, yeah, good job on Greg's point and William's point. And he said it loud. I'm like, man, no one's complimenting me. I was on a pedestal when I talked about consistency, and I left that pedestal with authority only to get fucking bastardized. You know what I mean? That was a pedestal moment. Connie, what's your thoughts on Shannon's question about, you know, possibly dealing with a partner that could be corrupted?
So in that instance, you know, I think we naturally want to believe the best in our colleagues, our coworkers, our partners. And the reality is that if something feels off, it usually is off. I think it matters that you do your due diligence and you actually have a conversation with your partner. Sometimes people don't even know that they're doing something that could be seen as blurred lines or undue familiarity, but definitely it matters that you have a conversation with that person. And if that behavior persists, I think it's okay to bring it up with them one more time, because you give them an opportunity to actually connect the dots. It takes longer for some than others. But in the meantime, you've got to be mindful of everything else that you stand to kind of put in jeopardy, right? So whether there's actually an undue familiar relationship going on with that partner or coworker and an inmate, there's so much that could be going wrong in the back end, right? We got to think safety, security, we think contraband, we think what else is happening. And the flip side to that is you want to protect your colleague, because many times just having that conversation sort of raises awareness of your colleague that maybe they don't know they're being targeted or they're being worked or they're in that subtle process of being manipulated. And you might be bringing something to their attention. But once you get past all the formalities and you've given your partner the opportunity to correct or self-correct, you have to escalate. You escalate it to the next in the chain of command, and you have whatever, I don't want to say evidence, but whatever it is to substantiate, you know, whatever your feelings are, whatever to justify those thoughts. You need to bring all of that forward, because this is someone's career. It is someone's reputation. And the last thing you want to do is kind of accuse them without having sort of ample justification for where those concerns are. And if it is that you are just having like a feeling, I think if you're escalating to the next in the chain of command, you want to substantiate what the feeling is and why, so that they could kind of understand where you're coming from.
Yeah, and guys, real quick, when it comes to dealing with someone, Greg's going to do a switch on top of it. I want to close off on a thought that I have. So let me get myself in there. Hey, guys, when it comes to dealing with someone that you feel maybe kind of crossing over to the dark side, obviously the approach will be in a private manner, or if you're not the one that has the rapport with that person, maybe somebody does. But the key is you have to do something. Most people get afraid because, you know, it's a feeling. They can't solidify it, but there's something not right. And believe it or not, we have those feelings for a reason. Sometimes that's experience speaking out or whatever it is. And then we're afraid that, you know, if we're wrong, what happens to that relationship we have with that individual? If that person has any respect for you, they'll understand why you did it, you know, in my opinion, you know, because sometimes we get lost in our own way. And there's a question later on about complacency, which I'll have Russ lead the way in. That could be a part of us watching out for ourselves, is maybe we do get lost and, you know, working in the same unit every day, we get stuck in a routine. So it's great to have, you know, someone from the outside looking in and say, hey, can I talk to you for a second? And be open to that dialogue. But the key is, if it does put a strain on the relationship, that's not your fault. You know, that's the person who's probably hiding something. But the problem is, guys, if you wait too long to address it, at that point, they're already involved, and you addressing it could reinforce it at that point later on if you go to address it. So the key is, you know, take the risk, because at the end of the day, what if you're right and you do nothing, and now you do have a corrupted officer? Now you're going to have to live with the fact that you did nothing about it. I mean, I hate when people say, well, I felt something was wrong. Yet you didn't do nothing about it. Right. You know, so the key is act on the feelings. You have those feelings for a reason. And if the relationship gets lost, that's on the other person. That's not on you. You did what was expected of you as a person who took a sworn oath, and also an effort to police each other. Hey, Greg, I know you wanted to touch on verbal judo, but is there anything you want to touch on this first before you go into verbal judo?
No, I think you covered it really well. Your final point about if you approach that person, and you know, this goes back to, actually, this is a biblical thing. You could go back way back where it says, hey, if your brother offends you, you go visit him, you talk to him. If that doesn't work, you bring somebody else with you, and you go up the steps. But one of the things you said was, if the person gets offended when you talk to them about it, then they're probably hiding something. If I'm not doing anything wrong and you bring it up to me, I'm going to be like, oh, wow, I didn't even realize that. Hey, thanks for bringing that up. I guess I'll think about it. If I'm doing something wrong and I get all pissed off and offended, then maybe there's a red flag there. But by all known, at no time should you ever be afraid to go talk to a coworker about undue familiarity or about an inappropriate relationship with an inmate, because I think it just opens those doors. And sunlight is the best disinfectant. Let's keep sunlight on our relationships with offenders. Rarely do we want to be behind closed doors with an offender where we can have a conversation that nobody else hears. There are times when you can pull them aside, but always make sure you're open and honest, and your coworkers know what's going on. No secrets, no hidden agenda. Just make sure you stay above board. And having those conversations, never inappropriate.
And wait, Greg, you got the verbal judo. You said you wanted to discuss it real quick.
Yeah, I thought a good transition, since I know we're coming near the end, is I wanted to just mention, for Andy's sake and for anybody, like, what is my number one tool to help you control a housing unit? What would be the number one thing I would make sure you take with you? And I mentioned at the beginning, the ability to communicate. And I actually have right here on my phone as we speak, I'm listening to it again on Audible, Verbal Judo. This is about the third or fourth time I've listened to it. It is probably the best book when it comes to the ability to listen and to understand what people are saying and how to communicate with them. It is a very, very important tool. Any corrections officer, whether you're a veteran or a brand new officer, if you're new, Andy, listen, read this book, make sure you use the tools that George Thompson gives you in Verbal Judo. It is a fantastic piece for learning to listen and know how to defuse situations without getting angry, without getting frustrated, without having to smash, be like Russ and Holt. I'm just kidding, Russ. But it gives you, especially for small guys like me, it gives you a chance to talk your way into or out of a lot of cool situations.
And now, guys, what I'm going to do is, because we got a lot of questions coming in, so I'm going to rapid fire some. I'm going to first direct it to the person who I think is best to answer. And if somebody else wants to compliment, by all means, feel free to compliment. And then we can maybe travel a little off topic, because I did promise Tiffany, she's got an interview tomorrow. So I did promise we would address some questions. She's coming over from YouTube, and she's been kind of with us during the whole episode. But I do have one question. Actually, I definitely have two questions I want to get to that deal with running a housing unit. And the first question is going right to Russ Hamilton. And then if somebody feels that they can compliment or add to it, by all means, just let me know. But I want to give this one to Russ first. It comes from Andy. What are some of the hot spots for contraband in the common areas of a housing unit?
Okay, so the way I always answer this one, and if you read like some of the things I always talk about, is I never try and worry about where to look. I always worry about why am I looking there, and almost everything that I've done is based on the actions of inmates, based off of body language, based off of behavior that I've seen them do. So having said that, it's just really about hitting those spots. I talk in a couple of my articles and stuff about what I call the crease, which are areas that are near where you might have rival gangs. They'll stash weapons there a lot of times. But mostly it's off of all of that behavior that I've had such a long and distinguished record of finding this stuff. But if I was going to give some things away, anytime that you can have a place where an inmate can hide something of significant value and still be able to have some sort of security on it, whether it's an individual or be able to spot it and see it, just be curious and investigate those spots and think about, what would I do if I were an inmate? Where would I hide this? I had one of these guys that was a maintenance guy, and he thought he was being slick by kicking all of these inmates out of the dorms and sending his inmates in there to do all of the work. And I said, whoa, how come you're not in there with them? And so sure enough, man, I started going into these places, and because they had tools and drills and everything, they'd hollowed out benches. And I had used my observation of what was going on that shouldn't have been to dig deeper in areas where normally I don't have wrenches and stuff always with me. But I borrowed some from Control and went in there and started taking things apart. And sure enough, man, telephones and knives and things for days. So the main thing I can tell you is be curious, investigate everything, and carry the stuff that's going to help you find it. Like I always had a magnet and a mirror and a flashlight. And those are the three basics, right? And, a little something that you can take a couple of things apart, whether it's a penny or a dime or just something shaved down if you have to. But just stay with it. And eventually you'll be able to hone in on that and just identify behavior that's going to tip you off to those bigger finds.
Hey, does anybody else want to attack the contraband questions? I have another question. And I like what Will said. Most facilities have so much overtime. Oh, that's for the gentleman that made over 100K.
I have one thing I wanted to add.
Yeah, go ahead, Connie.
From the medical side of the house, we would find contraband all the time in the bathroom in the medical area because we've had inmates from different areas who would sit in the waiting area to see their respective providers. We would constantly find, whether it's notes, whether it's any kind of contraband you could think. If they were trying to pass it and they knew they couldn't pass it on the walkway, or they knew they couldn't pass it in the housing area, they would wait until they all had their various appointments. And we would find it all the time in the bathroom in the medical area. We'd also find stuff tucked under the seats in the medical area, because although we have officer presence in that unit, he's controlling the list. He's controlling the inmate movement in and out the clinic. And the focus on being able to see when the inmates slip in and out or whatever, it really became a collaborative effort to keep eyes on that bathroom and anything else that was going. So the nurses would help out in those instances.
Yeah, and guys, that's great too, because there's a great partnership now. You see that right now? That's because the civilians have enough trust and custody to kind of say, hey, this is what we got going on. So look at that partnership there. And I believe Greg has something.
Yeah, speaking about, like Connie said, civilians, anytime you have any volunteers of any kind that come into your facility, or any visitors, if your facility is still unfortunately stuck where you still have to have actual visitation, any place that the visitors have access to, bathrooms, lobbies, waiting areas, you're going to see, because then the porters or the trustees or whoever, they clean those up, you're going to have drop areas for that. But last thing I want to say is something Russ said was just spot on. Is that when you're doing a shakedown, think like an inmate. Where would you hide something if you lived in that cell or if you were in that day room? That's where your mentality has to go. You have to think, where would you hide it? And that's a good place to start.
You're muted.
I'm muted. Yeah. See, I get the alert here. So I realize I'm muted and I try to race to unmute, but you guys, you get it off before that I could get to my, but I want to add something that Greg said, and also it feeds off on Russ as well, is that, guys, we're not there 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. So when you're in that survival mode and that's all you think about, you're going to be very creative in the way you do things, creative in the way, like, if you want to take your own life, and that's your focus. And this is what you're doing 24 hours a day when you want to hide something. So, I mean, it's tough. I think the best advice here was their behavior, because they know where it is. And when you get close to a certain spot, you're going to see reactions. Most of the time, they'll hide it in generalized areas so no one can get caught or in trouble. And, but in the end, I think the behavior is very good advice, because when you get near a spot, all eyes, because they know, and all eyes are wondering, you're going to find it today. I wanted to ask, I have a few questions, but I want to actually ask one question to Connie real quick before I go into two other questions from the board. But this is actually my own question. I thought I wanted to get out there. Connie, from a civilian perspective, you're walking in a housing unit. What do you expect from the officer? Just, from medical side, rehabilitation, whatever. What do you expect from the officer that's, walking with you?
So it depends on what we're there for. So if we're there to do meds, typically we would give the officer the list of folks who should be getting the meds, and we would expect that officer to kind of facilitate the inmates getting down to get to the med cart, right? Because at least he's, instead of the nurse being distracted or whoever's doing the meds being distracted by trying to make sure they align with the right med, the right inmate, the ID, all that other stuff, at least we know that we have this partnership with the officer who's helping to facilitate that. I think what we would also expect is that they've got eyes on the med cart, particularly because there's things that we just aren't necessarily seeing. And we know inmates, their fingers could be slippery. Things happen and we don't always catch it because we are focused on other things. From a service provision perspective, we've gone in to go do groups and, the day room's not ready, or there's not enough chairs, or, whatever, because things get moved around, right? So if there's just help to facilitate getting things organized so that we're not wasting time standing up, waiting to start a group, because that is valuable time, those things are helpful. And certainly if there's something going on in the unit that, maybe we haven't picked up on, I mean, situational awareness is important, but from a medical perspective, we're not always keyed into that. I mean, yes, we are in the units and we should always be vigilant, but we aren't. I mean, that's just a reality. And so having another set of eyes to kind of nudge us if we're not seeing something, or if we might have said something that could be misinterpreted, like, I think it's really important to have that officer who can kind of help keep us on task and also educate us, because some stuff we just don't know.
Right. Now, guys, there were, here it goes. I'm going to toss this one to Russ first, but I have a feeling we're all going to want to attack this question. And then I want to get to Tiffany's question. So Tiffany, if you're still there, we're going to get to, I just want to get to this question first. And I think we kind of hit up a lot of point with housing units. Obviously you have dorms, you have a lot of settings, but I think a big part of our discussion today was really your interaction with the inmate population. I think that's key. That's the foundation. So I think we really pretty much touched on the foundation and really kind of where the audience was taking us in regards to what their concerns were when dealing with a housing unit. Because again, it's dealing with the inmates. But how do you deal with complacency in the housing unit from officers with more time than you? This could cause a security issue in the future. So Russ, Russ is my guy when it comes to complacency, so I'll have him go first. But there's a little bit of a caveat to this question that I want to make sure we also express is, you're dealing with a senior officer who's complacent and you yourself are a rookie. So again, what would you do if you're that rookie? How would you address that? And then we could generalize the discussion on complacency. So Russ, what's your thoughts on that?
Well, yeah, when we talk about the complacency issue, the worst thing about complacency is obviously we never see it until it's too late. That's the thing. You have this situation where complacency is situational awareness perceived, but you haven't achieved it. So, and when you've got that older individual who's supposed to be on top of this stuff, it's very hard to try and steer them back to the light, because they bit into this thing where they believe they have the situational awareness. They bit into that, that routine of, nothing much is going on. There's no contraband in my housing unit. And the fact of the matter is they're simply wrong. They think that they understand, and they don't. So what to do about it? That's a huge question, because you're apt to alienate yourself if you just go, hey, why are you being so complacent? If you attack it from that position. If you pester them with questions, though, and ask them about what inmates are doing and why, and if you continually use, your sense of curiosity to go in there and start uncovering things, you find a shank here, you find a cell phone there, maybe you can wake them up a little bit. It may come to a point where they need to be shaken up a little bit. Unfortunately, that happens when something bad strikes, and where complacency has come into the picture to rear its ugly head, and then somebody gets hurt or worse. So that's what I would do. I would try and bring them, like I say, back to the light by peppering them with those questions and by trying to uncover as many things as you can yourself. The other thing that's worth a nudge, but you don't want to be called a snitch over it, is to just try and maybe get your sergeant to come down there and do a little bit of training, or get your sergeant down there to kind of come down and scope out and see what's really going on.
Hey, I want to maybe also get Will's comments on this with complacency. I want to, I believe I've seen videos on this on Will's channel as well. So I was wondering if you don't mind sharing some of your thoughts, Will. And thanks, Russ. I thought that was spot on.
Now, Russ is, I wish Russ was my training instructor when I started, because I could listen, and Greg too, really, but all you guys, but I could just listen to him talk forever, because he's got so much freaking knowledge. Here's how I'm going to attack this, okay? As a new boot coming in, as a rookie, you learn to do the job in the classroom, right? You know the basics. You honestly, you come out of the academy and you think you know everything. And so your perception of what might be going on, or the reason that this veteran officer is being complacent, may be wrong. That's number one. Okay, so Russ is right. If you go in there and you start writing people up, you start doing stuff, you're going to alienate yourself. But here's what I want you to do. Okay, we're going to go back to this novel concept of just communicating with people, right? That veteran that's been there 10, 15, 16, 20 years, 25 years, right? Why is he doing the job the way that he or she's doing the job now, right? Is it the last 10 years they've been working mandatory overtime? Crazy, 60, 70, 80. I work over 900 hours of overtime a week, right? That's why I can only do one YouTube video a week. Or excuse me, 900 hours of overtime a year, right? That's a lot. Is this guy going through a divorce? Is this guy stressed out? Has he been beat down? Has he been passed over for a promotion? Why does this person not care anymore? That's where, as a rookie, when you come in, and we talked about building relationships with the inmates and stuff, sometimes staff can be a little bit more vicious even than the inmates. Start building that rapport with that person. Talk to that person. Ask them. See what's going on, because there may be something going on other than that person just doesn't give a shit. Right? There was something during because that veteran, me, Greg, Anthony, we were all brand new at one point. We all had shiny boots and our uniforms fit really well, and we were all excited about doing everything. But somewhere along the line, we all hit bumps in our road, and we have to figure out how to push past that. And I bet we could all say that somebody helped us push past that. So when you rush in there, when you feel like this person's lazy, when you feel like they're not doing the job the way that the academy showed you, it's probably because the person that is teaching the academy hasn't ran a housing unit in 7 years. That's number one. And number two, there's so much. I'm going to say that the corrections is kind of like dog years, right? I mean, this guy's been in there 20 years. There's a lot of things going on in that guy's head that you want to uncover. Maybe that's why he's behaving the way he behaves.
Tony, there's a joke, and I don't know if it's not a suitable for work joke, but if you've ever seen the movie Colors, Robert Duvall and Sean Penn are in a squad car. They're police officers, and Robert Duvall tells Sean Penn a joke, and it's about cows, about bulls and cows. I'm not going to tell the joke now unless I really should, but if you know the joke, you know exactly what I'm talking about. Sometimes that complacency is merely that officer's ability to, those veterans, to conserve and wait for the fight. Yes, they can get complacent, but sometimes they're just holding back. They're conserving energy for the time that it needs to get there. So again, William, to your point, you're 100% right. You don't know what's going on, so learn and grow and glean from those guys. You don't have to run down the hill every time. Sometimes we can walk down.
And get them all.
Get them all.
They're still making fun of your 900 hours a week, Will.
That's because I work. Listen, try working 900 hours a year and see. I don't even know what day it is, right? I don't know where I'm at. I know when my Monday is and when my Friday is, and that's it. All right.
900 divided by 7.
I wanted to add something on the complacency thing real quick, because obviously complacency can become practice. We have to be very careful of that. That's why it's always good that we have supervisors that do those reminders of policy and procedures, and that when we sign off, we're actually reading those policies and procedures, because sometimes you may not be aware that the practice that you're doing is not by policy. When you have people that train people in the facility, if I know that I'm going to get a new boot, the first thing I want to make sure I'm up on point with policy, but I'm also going to have them read it, and I expect them to question me. Having said that, if I'm not doing that, maybe I could get lost in what I feel is policy, and I find out later on, wow, when did this change? You know, it's true. What happens here is you wind up having practice, train practice, and you don't realize that you left policy so long ago. So, you have to kind of keep yourself in check. I think when it comes to complacency, like Russ said, a lot of that is on you knowing that you're kind of slipping, maybe your hands in your pocket during a mass movement. That's something. But I also put it on the supervisors too. The supervisors should be able to see it and do things to remind people of where they're at. And I believe Connie, you have something you want to say when it comes to complacency?
Honestly, I think you guys covered it all with complacency. I just think from a civilian perspective that we've just got to be in a constant state of learning in order for us to not get into that space, because we learn something new literally all the time. I sit and talk with you guys, and I'm learning more about different security measures, policy, procedure that just isn't relevant to, well, at least in my initial experience. It was like, well, what is the relevance to civilians? So as I listen to you guys, I'm always translating. So how does this play out for a civilian? How do we make sure that the civilian understands exactly where you guys are coming from? So when I think of complacency and I think about civilians, I mean, a lot of times I think we can get too comfortable, right? And so that's where the complacency comes in. Like, I think about those folks who run like the chronic care clinics, right? Usually the population that comes into you is your regular people, because they have chronic diseases. And so are we still securing all the sharps, right? Oh no, that inmate's not going to take that from me. Are we still securing all the alcohol? Are we still securing all of the bacitration ointment? Or, just those things that I think become part of the routine, especially if you are that chronic care person and you are so familiar with these inmates. I think it's easy to kind of get complacent and think, this inmate is going to violate, right? Whereas the reality is that if you've presented them with the opportunity, they probably will.
Here's what I would like to do before we get to Russ. Hold on, because I still want Russ to comment. Hey, Tiffany, do me a favor. This is my email, gangianthony@yahoo.com. That's gangianthony@yahoo.com. Because you were so nice and waiting, if you want to, I'll email you a chance to get onto the stream right now and ask us the questions that you want to know before we tend to close off. But that's if you want to. Again, it's GANGI Anthony@yahoo.com. I'll give you the chance to bring you on, and you can talk to the panel directly. It's the least we could do for having you wait till the end of this discussion. So if you're willing to do that, hit a yes or no in the comment. If not, I get it. we'll go ahead and we'll still answer your question. But Russ, I know you wanted to touch on complacency. What do you got, Russ? You wanted to retouch on something?
I wasn't gonna touch on complacency. I was gonna circle back. I was gonna circle back to Connie and ask her why they would try and sneak out the bacitracin ointment. But then I thought better of it.
Oh, well, you should. That's wait. While we're waiting to see if Tiffany gives us a response, guys, I'm not monetized, so YouTube can't really. What's the joke, Greg? What's the bull joke? I'm trying to look it up on my damn phone. Right. I haven't seen that movie in years. Just say it.
So there's two old bulls standing at the top of a hill, looking down on a field of cows, and the young bull says to the old bull, "Hey, let's run down there and fuck one of those cows." And the old bull says, "No, let's walk down and fuck them all."
Fuck them all.
Oh, so you could have used "make love." I'm sorry.
That's exactly. Little Teddy Pendergrass, a little.
So here's what we'll do. We'll start. I don't know if Tiffany. I'm checking the emails, but either way. So basically, she's getting ready to have her interview tomorrow, which is pretty damn cool. She's getting ready to enter the field of corrections. And she was wondering what kind of questions do you think that they can ask on the interview process. So I know Greg had his hands in training. So I was wondering if I can go to you first, Greg.
Absolutely. I'm not going to get super specific because it does vary from facility to facility. But the types of questions most facilities have gone to, most industries have gone to now, are behavioral analysis questions. And they're going to ask you things like, tell us about a time that you did blank. Tell us about a time that you did blank. So what you're going to want to remember is this acronym, STAR. You're going to give a situation or task. You're going to talk about the action that you took and the result. STAR, situation or task, action and result. That's how you tell the story. So if they ask you those behavioral questions, you're going to give STAR, situation or task, action and result. And remember, the only person they're interviewing is you. So no matter how much you want to praise the team around you, they're interviewing you so you can talk about yourself a little bit. So the questions they're going to ask are going to be about when you're in a pod, inmates are going to test your ability to be consistent. Tell us about a time you were consistent. So then you give a situation, the action, and the results of how successful you were.
Yeah, and if I could add something on that too, guys, they look for consistency in your answers. Okay. Oh, so Tiffany may be willing to come on. Okay, Tiffany, just email me, gangianthony@yahoo.com. I'm going to send you a link. You just click on the link, and then I'll invite you in, and then we'll give you a chance to ask the panel a few questions. And I think we're going to try to do that a little more often just to get a little bit more interaction with you guys. So Tiffany will be the first one we ever do it for. So Tiffany, you're going to pioneer something on Tier Talk. We'll forever remember you. But one of the things I want to add is consistency. You need to have consistency. If you seem to be inconsistent or hesitant with your answers, then, they're going to look at you and say, well, maybe this person's not ready to do this job. They want to make sure you have someone that can adapt and adjust, that can deal with the situations. And even if you don't know an answer, the key is to maybe navigate your way to find out what the answer is. You don't want to freeze. I mean, in corrections, I know this may sound crazy, so don't take this as extreme as I know some people can carry it out, but the rule of thumb is we want action as opposed to inaction. So I think that's going to come across on the interview. And another thought is they need you. They need you to fulfill a position. So you go in there with your head held high, knowing that they need you, and let that confidence carry across. And Tiffany said she is already familiar with STAR. What's your thoughts on, Will? Do you want to add anything? Or no, Russ, go ahead. Russ, you want to go first?
Yeah, I wanted to. So usually what they do in these type of interviews is they will either have scenario-based questions or they'll have policy-based questions, and sometimes they tend to blend the two. So what you want to try and do is you want to try and be ready for a scenario that has something to do, or a policy question about use of force. You're also going to want to be thinking about a scenario or policy question with regards to PREA. You're going to want scenario or policy answer to something that involves inmate discipline. You're going to want the same thing to do with employee discipline. And then last but not least, you're going to want to talk about your ability to write, implement, and revise policy and procedure. And those are the basic things that they're all going to have. You know, it's probably going to be like 5, 6, 7, 8 questions like that are going to encompass that. So what you want to do is you want to make sure that you're able to break down each and every one of those, especially with regards to use of force, right? And so make sure you know yours backwards and forwards and everything that you need to do all the way down to getting that inmate or that suspect medical attention, right? So make sure all of your answers follow through from beginning to end and don't leave anything out.
I know, Will, you had something you want to say too, correct?
Yeah, I think there's certain things that everybody looks for all the time, right? And Greg's right, but if you focus on your ability to communicate with people, to build that common ground, if you understand that communication, that teamwork is how that we all survive this profession, right? So communication, teamwork, and then I always throw in, because in the last few years this is the new trend, mental health and rehabilitation reintegration is the future of corrections. So learn everything you can learn about different mental health treatment options. The facility that you work at, do they have a rehabilitation? Do they have GED? Do they have programming? These kind of things, because that's really, you know, the people that are doing these, running these facilities and stuff, they love talking about, you know, rehabilitation and stuff like that. So for me, everybody's giving you great information, but communication, teamwork, and rehabilitation is the future of corrections, would be my advice.
The good thing is I just sent Tiffany, so she's going to be coming on. I just sent her the link, so I want to give her a chance to interact. But Greg, you had something, correct?
Yeah, we have to remember that most of the facilities, especially when I was sat in on, you know, these are new officer interview questions. I want to make sure we're clear. When we bring somebody in who's never worked inside corrections before, we don't need you to be a wealth of information. We're going to give you the information. We want to know what type of personality. We want to know about what your past has been. We want to know how you've reacted, communicated in other industries. We don't expect you to have how to rewrite, an entire policy on different things. We want to know the type of person you are, so we can know how moldable you are, how teachable you are, how prepared you are to come into this environment. Those are some things. So I wanted to know what level Tiffany was going into. I guess it's a starter position. It's right off. It's right from jump. So there's any number of avenues they could go with that. And so I'm curious to see what her experience is or previous occupation, so we can cover that with her. I think that'll be helpful.
And Connie, do you have anything you want to add to this?
Yeah, so I was just adding in our private chat, it matters that she has the ability to critically think. I think that's always something that they're trying to assess, and whether or not you can adapt, because our environment is so fluid. So if you can think on your feet, your ability to adapt kind of walks sort of side by side, or they run parallel. And so when you can demonstrate that you can do that, it almost sends the signal that you have the environment, you have the ability to manage probably conflicting priorities, but also just to manage sort of the chaos that kind of comes with the role. So I think that really matters in this conversation.
Okay, so we got Tiff here. Smart move, Tiff. Tiff. Very smart move. She's already got the potential to be a great correctional officer. So Tiff, here's what we're going to do, Tiff, because as we start to wrap it down, I figure we could give you, if you have 3 questions you want to ask, because you have a big day tomorrow, you have an interview. So I thought maybe we can help you along the way. Maybe you never know what could, be asked of you. So I thought if you would like to ask the panel 3 questions, specifically whoever you want to ask, we're all here for you. So what would be one of the first questions you would like to ask us?
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can't see you though, Tiff. Smart. I can hear you.
I have my scarf on. I wanted to keep it professional.
All right, gotcha. So what's your first question?
Well, really, you guys answered them all. I was just worried about the situational type questions. But I do remember one of your videos talking about just remaining consistent. So I was just gonna continue to be honest, be consistent, and let them know that, I'm high on integrity and working as a team. But I just wanted to make sure that they weren't looking for anything specific that I might have to offer, and I didn't want to skip over that.
Well, you know what? Sometimes the questions that they'll ask could be stuff that you may have to deal with later in your career. So how about if I ask a question on your behalf, if I may, Tiff? Is that all right?
Oh, yes.
Okay, so let me do it this way then. Hold on one second. Let me do it the right way. See if I can. Hold on. Where is the? Oh, it doesn't let me turn off my camera.
Oh.
All right. So I'll do it this way. So I'm going to go with Connie first on this one. I think this is a great question for Tiffany because they could ask this. You never know. How about being a female working with male inmates? Could you see them asking that question? And what would be your response to that, Connie? Any tips that would help her if they asked that?
Absolutely, they may ask that. I mean, but I mean, I would caveat by saying, in this time of Me Too and just I want to be appropriate. I know, right? Like that's like a really shaky ground. I'm not really sure that during this sensitive time that there would be a specific gender-based question asked. So I would just say that. However, if in fact there is some way that they find the right words to ask a question in this realm, I think it's always appropriate to say that you would operate with the utmost of integrity and professionalism, no matter what population you were going to be serving.
Yeah.
And I got you, Greg. Go ahead, Greg.
The question is, and I'll ask it of Connie or Will or Russ, in this environment, you may be working with people of opposite gender or of transgender. Tell us about a time you worked with individuals or supervised individuals who are either of a different gender or transgender and how that worked out for you.
All right. You technically, as confusing as it is, you're 100% correct. It's probably how they're going to ask it. Actually, I saw something today that was sent to me from Indiana about
Cooper Anderson?
How they have to announce themselves on the wing. They no longer, like for Priya, you have to say male or female. Now it's gender something. But I think the one thing when they look, they're looking basically. I know, like if I'm interviewing somebody and I'm on the other end of the panel, I love what Connie said. I am looking for a level of professionalism. I'm looking for a level of integrity, but I'm also looking for someone who has a purpose, because corrections is a very tough profession to survive in if you're not purpose driven. So there's got to be a reason or something that's going to help you get through the bullshit. Believe it or not, I think everyone on this panel here right now, we're doing this on our own time. So as much as we want to talk shit, because once in a while we get through those disgruntled moods, we all have a purpose that helps us navigate through the rough times, but also it becomes a foundation that makes it harder for inmates to shift us from. Like if I have an inner purpose, a calling, and I believe that, there's something I can do in this profession, whether it is mostly it's an impact in some sense, whether it's, working with what I'm doing right now is technically one of my main motivators to put this profession on a higher pedestal like it deserves. But what you need to do is you need to kind of answer the why. I believe Simon Sinek says it best. When they ask you certain questions that may touch on why should we pick you? What makes you different than everybody else? That's where you want to focus on your purpose. That's what makes you unique. And I think that's what's going to come out. And that's when they're going to understand if this person has integrity. It's all about the purpose. If you have someone that literally is about the money, like for me, I'd rather hire someone that has a purpose as opposed to someone that wants a paycheck or medical or whatever. I'm looking for something internal versus external, if that makes any sense. And I can picture them asking, why should we pick you over the other candidates besides the fact that you may be the only one? The way corrections is going right now, you never know. But I'll go with Russ on this. I know Russ has something to say. What do you got, Russ, for Tiffany?
So, I think one of the great things that you've shown right here is the fact that you're taking some time to actually prepare for this. What you really need, though, is a way to let them know that. And so, in one of those scenario questions that they ask you, about, give them the best answer that you can think of for it, but then find a way to work in and say, I haven't worked in corrections, but I'm eager to learn. And one of the ways that I helped prep is that, I talk to these guys on Tier Talk, or my brother-in-law, is a correctional officer, and I spent some time with him. So I did try and research it some. What that tells me on the panel is you might have completely screwed up the answer, but it doesn't matter to me because I know you're going to go out and find the right answer and you're going to bring it back. And I'd rather have someone that does that than someone that just, throws correct answers out there and doesn't give a damn about actually getting in there and working the job.
And mind you, Tiffany, that comes from a sergeant from San Quentin.
Listen, I'm so honored. Like, you guys don't even know how much you're helping me out. I've been watching videos for days, and just to even be one of the first on this, I mean, I'm so humble. Like, thank you so much.
Sure, we're honored to have you.
You're welcome.
And by the way, I gave you my email. I'm sure if anybody else were here, if you want our email to hit us up directly. So mine's GangiAnthony@yahoo.com. What do you got, Russ?
I've got Sierra.Sargent@gmail.com.
We're spelling that out, right, Russ?
I'm going to spell it out for you. SIERRA.Sargent, which is the common spelling, SERGEANT.
And then we also got Connie. Connie, what's your email?
Sure. It's ConstantineAlleyne@gmail.com.
All right. And then William. By the way, Tiff, William's got a channel too. It's called Just Corrections. If you get a chance.
I've seen his channel.
Okay, well, there it is.
Well, thank you.
Hey, can I tell you something?
You have a viewer.
Got the CEO in her, man, because she just cut me off midstream.
I'm sorry.
So,
Yeah, I got one subscriber. Yeah.
hey, Will, what's your email?
It's justcorrections@gmail.com, and I dropped it in the comments there. Just corrections.
Oh, and also, if by chance, Tiff, which I'm sure you'll be fine, but if by chance the career as a CEO doesn't work out, Greg from Guardian RFID is here, always looking to hire somebody. Greg, what's your email?
Greg@guardianrfid.com. The simplest email. But
Thank you.
You know what, Tiffany, if you go to our YouTube channel, I'm not pushing my company's YouTube channel, but go to our YouTube channel. It's Guardian RFID. We have about 75 or 80 videos. There's Tier Talk videos, William Young videos, McConaughey's videos, mental health videos. You don't have to look at the how-to videos for our software, but literally there's a bunch of videos we've tried to collect just as a kind of a gathering point. The last thing I'll tell you is I hope and pray they actually ask you about how you're going to deal with stress, because you're about to step into an industry that once you reach 5 years in corrections, you're going to be in the top 5 of all careers for PTSD, addiction, divorce, suicide, and addiction. And you need to understand that this is a high stress industry. Learn to deal with that now from day one. Learn to have appropriate means, family, friends, people you can talk to and share what's going on, because inside these walls, things happen that no one would ever understand. So please always remember to take care of yourself first. Just like when you get on an airplane and the oxygen mask comes down, the flight attendant says, put it on yourself first. Take care of you first and make sure you know that going in.
Wait, hey, Tiff, before you go, because we're talking about stress, I have to get Will on this. Hey, Will, just in case they ask that, what would be something that you would answer just to help her out?
For stress?
Yeah, that's you, man.
Ask me the question. I don't know anything about stress and corrections.
Sure, I agree with Greg. I think they're looking for people that are, obviously you want someone that's stable. So they may ask her, how would you deal with stress? And obviously they'll add certain things about how this environment, you know what it is? Let me just put myself in real quick. You know what it is, guys? Sometimes what they'll do is when they have these interviews, they may try to put like these extreme moments to see how you handle stress. And it's not just in the moment, but also how you're processing it and how you're taking it out with you. So if someone was to ask you, Will, what's the best way to cope with, let's say, an inmate suicide or, a fight or blood, whatever, what would be some of the advice you give for her in case they ask her something about basically how does she deal with something as stressful as, corrections could be?
I think that there's you understand the difference between good stress and bad stress, and just like we talk about situational awareness inside the unit, you need to have internal situational awareness too. And so if you see something that in corrections is a beautiful career because I worked here 16 years before I had to do CPR on somebody. I mean, there's all kinds of things that'll be thrown at you, and if you prepare for that. And you have these, like Anthony said, you keep in touch, you keep your hobbies, you keep your friends outside of corrections. You do things to take care of yourself. Part of being a correctional officer is self-care. It's just as important as working out or maintaining a proper diet. You have to go out with friends, you have to go hiking, you have to go whatever makes you happy. You have to keep doing it, but understand that part of your job will be learning to process things that you didn't even know were going to be thrown at you. And so when those things come up, you need to look at those resources. What does the facility have for you? You need to get on and email one of us. You need to talk to, your pastor or a neighbor or a fellow coworker or somebody. If something inside doesn't feel right to you, or if you have a problem with something that you saw or heard, then you need to talk about it, and then that will start you on the right path. It's no different than doing push-ups. You can't do 500 push-ups in one day, right? You can't. The first time you see a dead body, the first time an inmate threatens to kill you, it's going to freak you out a little bit. But as you learn how your body's going to react to that and how your mind's going to react to that, then you get stronger over time because you've employed those techniques.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I think the key thing, if I add, because me and Will's covered this multiple times, is understanding that you're not going to have a chance to process it in the moment, but you have to allow yourself to process it after the fact. So you're expected to do a job, obviously, and that's going to maybe keep you busy. But then when it's over, sometimes people forget about it. No, you got to sit down and think about what you just saw, just to make sure you're good. Because if you don't, it piles up, and eventually it's going to get to you. And then that's true, guys. There's no, it's true. I mean, the stuff you're seeing, and I believe now the department, because they should be pushing for a healthy staff. I think we can release some level of vulnerability, even with each other. I think Will has pioneered a lot of stuff that says it's okay to not be okay. That's exactly his quote. Maybe a shirt later on down the line, Will, because but on a serious note, we didn't know we could say that, maybe an inmate suicide affects us. We didn't know we were allowed to say that. We thought that we had to have this tough exterior, and maybe that's the old school. But then you get people that say, no, it got me too. And then hey, it got to me. And all of a sudden you're like, wow, I wasn't alone in this. So therefore, maybe it's okay to feel that way. I think what Will started was the fact that people didn't know that it was okay to feel a certain way. So we're telling you from behind the scenes, in this room right now, we probably have close to 100 years or maybe even more of experience in corrections, that it's okay to feel a certain way. What's not okay is to not do something about it. Right. Because at the end of the day, if you don't tell somebody, you don't do nothing about it, you're not helping the agency. You're becoming a liability, because eventually you are going to not be able to, handle one moment. You're going to freeze or you're going to be overwhelmed because you're not processing it correctly. And next thing you know, now we have someone that is just not able to do the job. So if that question does come your way, just let them know at all times it's about how you need to process it. Maybe not at the moment, but you will be processing it and you will be addressing it. And then hopefully, it never gets easier. It doesn't. It never gets easier, But the point is, you learn how to deal with it. That's the key. You kind of like the loss of a loved one, hypothetically. I'm not looking to overcome the death of my dad. I'm looking to be able to deal with it. And to be able to move forward with my life. Is anybody else with stress before we come to a close? I believe Connie has something, right?
Yeah, one thing I just wanted to say is that when you don't deal what's making you mentally ill, it does transition into something that will make you physically ill. And so you just always want to put it in that space where it's a priority to deal with it, because it will manifest itself some way or another, whether you want it to or not. So I would just say, as you listen to what your body is telling you mentally, as you're responding to things that's going on in the environment, just know that if you don't actually address what's impacting you mentally, it will manifest itself physically.
Yeah, that's 100% true. So actually, this advice we're giving you now is to hope that it doesn't happen, because when it does happen physically, it's going to happen when you don't want it to happen.
Can I just add something real quick, Anthony?
Yeah.
When we talk about this mental health stuff, a lot of people, especially newer officers, don't understand it, right? And they're like, "Well, I don't know what you're talking about. This, I'm excited, I'm ready to go," but take this information the same way you take your self-defense and your defensive tactics information. The self-defense instructor is not telling you that you are going to be stabbed, you are going to be assaulted. They're saying that there may be the ingredients, there may be a situation that somebody does try to assault you, and if they do, then here's how you hold your hands, here's how you react. That's when we talk about this mental health, and Connie's talking about the effects that it has on your body, which are very real. We're not saying that. A lot of people get turned off because they say, well, that's not going to happen to me. We're not saying it's going to happen to you, but we're saying that, well, actually, I am saying it's going to happen to you, but I'm saying that take this, and down the road, if something manifests, if you have trouble sleeping, if you get home from work one day and you're just like, geez, I don't know if I can go back, then that's when you look back at this mental health stuff and say, okay, now what did they talk about? What tactics can I use, just like you do self-defense? So you need to treat that mental health side as seriously as you do your physical safety.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and hey, Tiff, one more thing, and but real quick before, hey, Andy, real quick, just to answer your question real quick, because we're getting ready to come to a close. If you do reach out for help, are you seen as a risk? It's a risk if you don't reach out for help.
Oh, that was good. Yes.
Yeah, it's a risk. If you, oh, really? Can I get it? Can I get that in the private chat?
You're so here I go.
No,
let me put this in here. Let me put this on here.
Standing up.
Hey!
Hey, Tip. Before we say goodbye, I want to say something real quick. You're about ready if given the chance, and I'm sure you'll do great on the interview. And if not, don't get discouraged, because if you don't get it, then you have all our access, and we'll all spend time tutoring you to make sure you get the next one. But I'm pretty sure you're going to get it this time. But either way, you're going to enter a great profession. And there's so many battles in this profession. I mean, the key here is the battle is that this profession is fighting to still get recognized in a higher level than it is. But you're going to be part of a great service that people don't see, because what we do, the work behind the wall, is it's hidden. But what I want you to remember going into this profession straight through the 25 years is that the work you do has value.
Right.
Just never forget that. And if you can connect your purpose with value and then act it out in your behaviors, you're gonna own the system. And one day you'll look back and say, hey, again, same thing as Andy, I made it to the top. And it really wasn't so much the knowledge, but rather more of your persistence in being who you need to be and creating that impact. So just, again, good luck tomorrow. Let us know. You got all our emails. So here's what we expect from you, since we did this for you.
Right.
Okay.
We expect an email back with all of us in one email telling us how you did, how it went, and I'm expecting to read that tomorrow, T. That's how you pay us back.
Okay, I can assure you will get an email from me tomorrow, letting you know how everything went, and I'll give you an update, when they reach back out to me. And I'm just going to go ahead and put it out in the atmosphere that I have it, because I feel super confident, and you guys helped get me to that level. I'm walking there with my head held high, and I'm going to be ready.
Well,
Nice.
Check this out. And then if I may, then even if whatever, welcome to the Tier Talk family, T. We'll get you there.
Thank
regardless.
you. Thank you.
All right, T. Take care of yourself. Thanks for joining us.
You too. Bye-bye.
All right, guys. So I thought we could wrap down and close. Guys, this was a great discussion. I thought we could all have our closing thoughts. So I'll go bottom up. I guess we'll go with Russ first. Russ, the founders and keepers of chaos. Guys, if you get a chance, I know a lot of people run away from social media, but guys, in our time, obviously there's groups being formed out there that are founded by professionals and moderated by professionals, and the group has a lot of professionals in there. So outside of what we do here on the YouTube channel, we do have groups like Keepers of Chaos that's very active in the moment. The moderator, Russ Hamilton, along with Jim Hall and Boggs and just a bunch of good people, they get to you directly. They're dedicated. Most of them aren't even in the profession anymore, but they just keep in touch with the people. So if you get a chance, if you could travel over to Keepers of Chaos and kind of join the group. And here's the cool thing about it all, guys. It doesn't cost, everything we do doesn't cost anybody any money. That's the key, because we know that the information has to get out there, because in the end of the day, it makes the profession safe. So, Russ, anything in closing about today?
Yeah, talking about this running the housing unit, running a yard, whatever it is that you're doing in corrections, it's just one of those things that, you can listen to all of this. In the end, you have to take the bull by the horns, and then you have to wrestle it into a position that you're able to deal with it on your own level. And so you have to, look at what you're doing, observe, adjust, and overcome, and just keep going at it. Be active, be proactive, be preemptive, and stick with it. Last thing I want to say is Tiffany, she came on to this show. That shows she has a lot of confidence. I think she's going to do fine in her interview, and best of luck to her.
Awesome. Hey, Will, what do you got?
When you start, take a look around, take a look at all the officers, learn from them, the good and the bad. Take what works for you, what works, and what doesn't work, throw it out. I can't run a housing unit like Russ. Greg can't run a housing unit like me. Anthony can't run a housing unit. So you need to take the.
Wait. There's no comparison there.
I'm sorry, but seriously, learn who you are as a person. Learn who you are in the uniform. Cater to your strengths. Understand your weaknesses, and you'll do just fine.
Yeah, I think that, and I think the part of that he's definitely trying to get out is be yourself.
Right.
A lot of people think they have to be ultra aggressive, and technically that doesn't work. I know that from experience as well, because I'm 5'6". I'm seen as a very big guy, and believe it or not, my height, my stature, it doesn't intimidate many people.
Right.
In elementary schools.
Yeah, maybe a third grader. There was that one third grader. Hey, Greg, what do you got, brother?
Well, I did notice that Russ used a analogy by grabbing the bull by the horns. Yes. So I'm going to finish up with another great quote. I'll tell you what, you can get a good look at a T-bone by sticking your head up the bull's ass, but I've got to take the butcher's word for it.
It's got to be your bull.
Absolutely. Milk your bull for you. I milked your bull for you while you were gone.
The wisdom that you're leaving behind as guardian RFID director of jail operations?
Yeah. Listen, here's what that quote means, is that you can take a look at what's going on inside a facility, inside a housing unit, Andy, by looking at other housing units. But honestly, the best thing to do is to glean from all those officers that you want to mentor from, and you want to find things. The one thing that happened to me when I got into corrections is I couldn't find a good mentor outside of the jail. I couldn't find, a lot of good people that I could deal with, because you don't meet a lot of people who are willing to openly admit they work in a jail. But once you start finding those people inside the walls, once you get inside, find out, look at other housing units and go, man, that's a clean run housing unit. That's a success. I love the way this unit is run. Talk to that officer. Find out what they do. Use that information. Yeah, Russ has been around since Paul and Timothy were in jail in the New Testament. But I'll tell you what, he has got a ton of good information. So do glean from everybody you can, the good and the bad, and you can find that nice balance for your living unit, for your housing unit, so you can run something that you're proud of, and that you can go home every night, hang your hat up and say, you know what? I did a good job today. I was honest, I was fair, I was respectful, and I feel like a professional today.
You know what? You just touched on something before we go to Connie. You just touched on what we're going to do next week, next Tuesday. So guys, don't forget, every Tuesday we go live, 9:00 Eastern Standard Time. I want to do a topic on finding someone to mentor you in corrections at the beginning of your career. What it is you need to be looking for. Again, you have people that want to come in, be that professional right away. They want to, it's a career for them. So, what are we looking for in a mentor, to be guided through, what should we expect? And I think that's a great topic, worthy of discussion. Thanks. I know we've covered that before on a regular show, but it'd be great to kind of see, what we need out there. If I want to become a professional, what am I looking for? Who do I need to connect to? Because God forbid you connect to the wrong person at the very beginning of your career. You may not have enough experience to know that you're being led down the wrong way. Hey, Connie, what's your thoughts in closing?
I know we were focusing on the housing unit, but I feel like ultimately where you have the most control is within yourself. And so as you step into the role, you step into a housing unit, you step into medical, having self-control will be paramount. And whatever you're going to be faced with, you're going to have to not only have self-control, but you have to own yourself. You have to own your role, your title, any inherent authority in that title, and learn how to engage in the environment in a way that actually keeps you safe, but also mitigates all the other liability that we know we stand to face if in fact we are not in control of ourselves.
I'm tatting in the private chat if we're all. I'm tatting in the that was all.
What?
I'm chatting in the private. No, I'm texting and messaging in the private chat if we're all good for next Tuesday for the mentoring discussion. Hey guys, so my closing thoughts. Hey Russ, real quick, what's your email?
Sierra.sargent@gmail.com. That's SIERRA dot Sargent, SERGEANT @gmail.com.
Right, guys. So just to be consistent with what we're doing, maybe towards the end of the episode, we'll bring somebody on and we'll kind of give them a chance to meet with the panel. But guys, I'm just going to kind of compliment what everybody else said already. You know, basically, I think the key is be yourself. You know, when you're running the housing unit, be yourself. Establish that level of authority. Don't know your resources. If there's a point where you're new and you're trying to navigate your way, find strength in someone else who can help you until you where you need to be. Guys, experience takes a while, obviously. So while you're earning that experience or that level of discretion, say no. Keep things in your control. Again, those can always be changed. Yes, very simple advice. I'm going to lean back on what Russ said at the beginning. A lot of people teach be firm, fair, and consistent, but they teach it as something's going on here in the background. Wait, what happened? What happened? Because I was on a pedestal real quick. You guys, what happened? Wait, what happened? Come on, Greg, you're going on screen. What happened?
You have to read Connie's chat. She once again complimented you on your ability to manage the show so beautifully.
Thanks, Greg. As Anthony skips over my closing thought to ask about next week. Huh?
You just blew right through what she was talking about. Hey, Connie, tell us about a time you were really hurt personally. Hey, next week we're going to be having some fun.
Wait, Connie, you weren't. No, because there was a pause, guys. It was like a 5-second pause. Connie, were you done with your wait, hold on, Connie. I'm sorry. Hold on. I have never cut her off in the years we've been doing this. I thought she was done. You paused for too long, Connie. That was like, were you done? Or is that comment a bunch of crap because you want to be on board with everybody else? No, I'm putting you out there. Was that the party or what?
Done.
Well, I don't know what my closing thought was. I was trying to be. Oh, real quick, Russ. Man, be firm, fair, and consistent. Usually, most people look at that as something outward that reflects the inmates. It's not. It can only be done outward if you see it inwards. So you can't expect to manifest any behavior if you yourself don't believe it. So be firm, fair, and consistent is a look inward. You know what? Let me just do this in all fairness. Connie, I did not mean to cut you off, so can you do the closing for the show? No, do it. Do it, Connie.
I'm not in a space where I can do the close for the
show. I want you to be like my wife and say you're not in the mood. You know what I mean? No, Connie. All right, okay, I'll start it off. All right, guys. If you like the show, please
subscribe,
click
that little bell so you're notified every time I release another video.
Absolutely.
All right, guys, be honest with you, it's after 11. It's probably 8 o'clock by Russ, so he's good. Look how happy he is. While everybody else, Nebraska, Will's got to go to work, so he's got that to look forward to. All right, guys. So again, guys, thank you guys for watching. Again, every Tuesday 9 o'clock. I apologize, kind of didn't realize I cut you off. And as always, guys, the show's taped. If you haven't, please subscribe, interact, engage, comment, hit that bell. The bell's going to notify you every time I post a video. Stay